Welcome to U.S. Immigration TV. Well, USCIS recently announced a new policy where they will consider, and I quote, waiving interviews for conditional permanent residents, or CPR, who have filed a petition to remove the conditions on their permanent resident status, unquote. In other words, when a person obtains a temporary green card through marriage to a U.S. citizen, and 2 years later, they have to file a joint petition with their citizen spouse to remove the conditions, they may not necessarily be required to go in for an interview. Their case could be approved or the conditions removed with no interview required. I think this is a welcome change in the previous guidance or policy that required conditional residents to undergo an interview if they obtained CPR status, via consular processing, whatever. I also think that this will help reduce the backlogs and waiting times for everyone seeking other immigration benefits, because it would eliminate the need for the officers to devote time and resources for these unnecessary interviews. Now, who could be eligible for a waiver of the interview? How can you prepare or document your case to increase your chances of avoiding an interview? Now, in this video, I will provide some tips and guidance, so make sure to watch the video until the end. Now, first, here's a little bit of background. When a person marries and is petitioned by a U.S. citizen, and their green card is approved within 2 years of the marriage, they're issued a temporary 2-year conditional green card. And they must ordinarily be interviewed in connection with this initial green card. This policy I'm talking about of waiving an in-person marital interview does not apply to the initial or their first interview. The couple should really have to appear. Now, 2 years later, or actually it's 90 days before their 2-year green card expires, the couple has to file a joint petition to remove conditions, or Form I-751, which is like a status or a probation report demonstrating to the USCIS that for the past 2 years while they were married, they live together, they have joint documents, and it is truly a bona fide real marriage, as opposed to being a fixed marriage where they're living separately. And they would ordinarily have to be scheduled for a second interview in connection with removing conditions. And so if the officer is satisfied that it is a real marriage after 2 years, the conditions are removed and the person is issued a full 10-year green card. USCIS has now realized, and I quote, prior policy requiring mandatory CPR interviews did not prove to be an efficient use of USCIS staffing resources. In other words, in some cases, having a second interview to remove the conditions was just simply a waste of time. According to USCIS, and I quote, under this policy update, USCIS may waive the interview requirement if a USCIS officer determines there is sufficient evidence about the bona fides of the marriage, the joint filing requirement is eligible for a waiver if applicable, there is no indication of fraud or misrepresentation in supporting documents, there are no complex facts or issues to resolve, and there is no criminal history that would render the CPR removable. In other words, if, when filing the joint petition after 2 years, the couple provides sufficient evidence and documents establishing the bona fides of the marriage, and there's no, let's say, fraud or fixed marriage indications, and the person has no criminal history, they may not be required to undergo a second interview. The green card or removal of conditions could be approved on the documents alone. So, what can you do to increase your chances of getting a waiver of the interview? Well, first, I would advise that during that 2 years of conditional residence, make sure to save and organize documents demonstrating you are in a good faith marriage. Don't wait to start scrambling looking for documents 90 days before that 2-year green card expires. For example, show you have joint bank accounts and there is activity in those bank accounts, such as ongoing deposits and withdrawals. Obviously, if a couple opens a joint bank account with $100 and there's no activity that takes place, that's not convincing. They're commingling their money and they're living as a loving couple. If the couple is renting or leasing, make sure the lease shows both their names. Maybe have the landlord add the spouse to the lease. If one of the spouses has a health plan at their workplace, add their spouse to that health plan. And of course, when filing tax returns, make sure you file as married. If you have a cell phone plan, make sure both spouses are on that plan. And the same is true with your other bills and utilities. Have them in the name of both spouses versus everything in one person's name or the other. And of course, it should be at the same address, the address you're listing where you're living together. If there's life insurance, name your spouse as a beneficiary. Have pictures of yourselves together at different times and places. Obviously, if you have a picture of yourself or selfie, it's not convincing you're in a love marriage. Make sure you're together. And also try to have photos together with family and friends, demonstrating that you're holding yourselves out to others as a married couple. And be aware, USCIS has access to various websites, including credit companies like TRW or Experian, to make sure you're actually at the same address, because you can be giving an address to USCIS, but in reality, one is having their bills delivered to a different address or they're living at a different address, so they can check that. USCIS also checks your social media, such as Facebook and Instagram, things like that. Obviously, if someone's posting photos of themselves with their boyfriend or girlfriend while on vacation, that's not going to be a good indication that they are in a bona fide marriage with their citizen spouse. There are many other types of documents and evidence that could be presented to the USCIS to demonstrate and to document that you have a good faith marriage, so as to greatly increase the chances of having your interview waived to remove your conditions. And I would also suggest you may want to consult with an attorney who can assist you in preparing the joint petition, organizing the documents, and increasing your chances of getting the interview waived. But I do think that this is great news, and it's welcome news, and will help save time and the resources for the USCIS by waiving these unnecessary interviews. And so therefore, officers, of course, can devote more time to other cases and be able to more quickly adjudicate and approve other people's petitions and applications. Now, I hope you have found this video helpful and informative, and I will continue posting videos on a wide variety of immigration topics, news, and updates. So make sure to like, share, and most importantly, subscribe to this channel. I'm Michael Gurfinkel, and thanks for watching US Immigration TV.